Hey, Rob with Pallet Rack World here. All right, so you're probably buying pallet racking or warehouse racking, industrial shelving, whatever you want to call it. You're probably buying it for the first time and maybe a little frustrated because you just don't know really where to start. You don't know what you need, how many uprights, what is an upright, how many beams, how many decks. All right, we're gonna walk through it. We're gonna do this together, and I promise you'll get it in about 2 minutes. All right, so let's start by identifying each component of pallet racking. Typically, it's just 3 components. You've got the vertical uprights, which are usually green or blue. You've got the horizontal beams, and then the wire mesh decking. Of course, there's other accessories, but we're just gonna simplify it. So in this picture right here, the green verticals, those are the uprights. And there's sometimes a lot of confusion when customers are buying this for the first time. They think it's 2 separate pieces, but it's not. It's the front post, the rear post, and the bracing that welds it together. So, all right, we know what an upright is. What's a beam? The beam is the horizontal. They're usually orange, 90% of the time they're orange. And in this picture, you've got 3 beam or shelf levels that you see. And then finally, what's a wire deck? Sometimes people refer to them as grading, wire mesh decking, whatever you want to call them. Wire decks is fine. Those are the grids that simply drop into place. They create the shelf. For an 8-foot beam, you're gonna have 2 decks. For a 9-foot and a 10-foot beam, you're also gonna have 2 decks. For a 12-foot beam, you're gonna have 3 wire decks. We'll go over the sizes later. All right, so now that we know what an upright, a beam, and a wire deck is, how do we figure out just how many of each you're gonna need for your warehouse? We're gonna answer 3 questions. How many rows of racking, how long for each row, and how many shelf levels high? So in this picture, you see the blue are the uprights, orange are the beams. You don't see any wire decks in this picture, but that's okay. This picture is 32 feet long. 1 row, 32 feet long, because the sections are 8 feet wide. So then you would figure out how many rows of this, and then again in this picture, it shows 3 shelf levels of beam lengths. So finally, let's figure out the sizes. So how high you need for your uprights? Well, it's gonna be based on really how high your ceilings are and how high your forklift will go up. But let's just say you're doing 3 shelf levels. Each shelf level's at, the first one's 5 feet high, the second one's 10 feet high, third one's 15 foot high. You're gonna need at least 15 foot high uprights. And a typical upright is gonna be 16 foot high. So they really range 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot, 16 foot, and 20 foot high are the most common heights for uprights. All right, so we've got the upright figured out. Now, how long for the beams? The most common beam lengths are 8 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot, and 12 feet long. So if you have 40-inch, a typical, very standard pallet is a 40 by 48. You say, what does that mean? Well, that means 40 inches wide by 48 inches deep. So if that's the case, you would want to use either 8-foot or 12-foot beams. So if you're using 8-foot beams, you're going to have 2 40-inch pallets on that shelf level. And if you're using 12-foot wide beams, it's going to be 3 40-inch wide pallets per shelf level. All right, so why would we use a 9-foot beam? Well, sometimes pallets are 48 by 48, meaning 48 inches wide by 48 deep. And you might ask yourself, well, can't we squeeze those into an 8-foot beam? That's nearly impossible, especially if there's overhang on that pallet. So a 48-inch wide pallet, you're gonna do 2 of those for a 9-foot beam. And then sometimes there's even wider pallets than that, or you might be storing different item, different product, different inventory on there, which is going to require 10-foot long beams. So now that we've figured out we've identified racking and we've figured out how many rows, how long for each row, how many shelf levels high. We basically figured out how many uprights, beams, and decks you're gonna need. Your next question, probably, how is this gonna get delivered to me? Well, that really depends on your dock situation. So shipping pallet racking, it's usually easier on like a flatbed trailer, or sometimes it's called a hot shop. If it's, 40 foot long, or a 48 or 53 foot long is called a flatbed. But it's easiest to handle racking if you load and unload it from a flatbed. But that requires a ground level forklift at your destination so that you can unload it from the side, as you see from those pictures. The other way it can ship is in a 53 foot dry van. That requires palletizing everything, and you would have to have a dock height loading dock and a forklift to drive in, retrieve the pallets, and then bring it out. If it's a smaller amount of racking, ship it in a box truck, or it can also ship LTO. All right, so we've covered a lot. If you have, you're probably gonna have more questions, but for a quote to discuss your rack setup, your layout, anything warehouse pallet racking related, give us a call, send us an email. We're here to help.